Welcome back to another episode of the Sales Gravy Podcast. On this episode, we're going to be focusing on what leaders need to be doing right now to keep their sales organizations focused and moving forward in the face of all the volatility that's happening in the marketplace and all the bad news and the ups and downs that are happening in the news. Now, before we get started, I want you to check out Sales Gravy University. Sales Gravy University is where sales teams from across the globe come to train and learn and hone their sales skills so that they can sell more, close more, build bigger pipelines. And right now, you can check out any course on Sales Gravy University, if you've never checked out one before, by using the code FREE course. So if you've never been on Sales Gravy University before, you get your very first course for free, any course you want, with the code FREE course. And while you're there, make sure that you check out our team account or our team hub options for small and scaling sales teams. Just go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com and use the code FREE course. Now, with me today is Graham Hooper, who is the CEO of Ellison Technologies. And Graham and I have known for each other for a very long time. We work with his company. And I've been dying to get Graham on my podcast literally for about 3 to 4 years. I've been thinking about this and planning this, and he's so busy flying all over the world and doing all the things that he does and running a big business. But we finally got together because Graham is a smart dude. And he's just got this inherent ability to understand sales and understand sales people and how to lead them at a level that most leaders in his place as a CEO don't really get. So it's going to be important that you pay attention and take some notes because he knows what he's talking about. Graham, welcome to the Sales Gravy Podcast.
Thanks, Jeb. Appreciate it, and looking forward to our chat.
Graham, give me a little bit of background on you. So I know this because you and I have spent time together, but a lot of people don't. So what I really should talk about is tell us about your sales chops. Why should people pay attention to you when it comes to selling and leading sales teams?
Okay, give you a little bit of background. I, as you may be able to tell, I was originally from England, and I started off life as an engineer. Did an apprenticeship, worked in manufacturing, on the shop floor, in the engineering department, programming, estimating, stuff like that. And at a very young age, I remember attended a big machine tool show. So big machine tools are the machines that make the parts that go into everything and anything, from airplane engines to medical components to cars, etc., etc. And I was blown away by the show. It was phenomenal technology and really an exciting environment. And kind of made the decision there and then I wanted to be a machine tool salesman. It seemed like the greatest job on earth to me at the time. And with that, I found an opportunity for working for an American company. I worked for a Japanese company selling machines. And I guess I started, 23, 24 years old, my first sales job. And as we would say in England, I didn't know an end mill from a windmill when it came to selling. I was kind of really thought it would be a great idea. And I can remember making my first sales call and really not even knowing how to begin the conversation. But I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate in as much as the company I was working for invested in their sales teams. And at that time, we had a sales training company that we worked with called the TAC organization, a book written by Alfred Tack, Selling to Industry, which I went on their course in London. And I remember reading this book and doing the course, and it was a week-long course in a beautiful part of London, and I was so excited. It was an emotional experience, learning how to sell to industry. And the book Selling to Industry, I must have read that book 20 times because it became my Bible of how to sell. And to the point when even if I went into a slump, I would get it out again and reread it. Let's relook at it. And the beauty of, I think, sales is that it's fundamental, really, in my mind, that when you are in times like we're in at the moment, where things are a little tougher, I always think it's a good time to go back to basics, that you start to look at the basic things and start to re-implement those. So for us, when I talk about basics, I'm a firm believer. We've had a good run for the last few years. I think a lot of people have. The economy's been good, and if I'm honest, I think what that breeds, Jeb, is a little bit of complacency. You forget some of the fundamentals that you need to be doing to make sure that you are on top of your game. And by that, I mean, what we do is I kind of believe that you can't improve what you don't measure. And so at times like this, we go back to the basics, the dashboards. We have a sales dashboard for each office and for each salesman that looks at the fundamentals of, things like call rates, things like amount of quotes that are being generated, amount of obviously orders that people are getting, and that amount of time that a project is in the pipeline, and is it being moved to the next stage, etc. So we've done a lot of we invested a lot with Salesforce.com and developed our own dashboards that suit our needs. And at a very quick glance, we can see, and some from the training that we've done with you in recent years, our leadership training, we have implemented the one-on-one quick 15-minute salesman to sales manager reviews, just in order that everybody is on the same page, and it's an opportunity for the sales guys to say, hey, this is where I need help, this is where I think, and for the sales manager to sort of say, hey, let's do some joint calls together, let's get out, let's go see this customer, let's go and help try and move this one to the next stage, let's do that. So I think, my thought process is that it is very much a back to basics sort of approach in a tough market. I think the other thing that you have to do is you have to be strategic in the way you go out, not just scattergun, but you have to look at, in our world, the sort of industry sectors that are busy. At the moment, just because of the way the economy is, there are certain sectors that are quiet, but there are others that are very busy. In our world, where we're making parts, or our customers are making parts, one of the big growth areas, because of the issues with the war in Ukraine, is defense spending. Defense spending is up. So we're very focused on defense companies and the supply chain to the defense companies, because we see opportunity there. So you've got to kind of target that. Other industry sectors that we see that continue to be pretty busy, medical is, aging population, continuing to invest year on year on year. There's always growth within the medical sector, so we put focus into that area. Space, Elon Musk, Blue Origin, these guys are doing great things. There's a hell of a lot of business that's in that particular sector, and we're selling a lot and targeting a lot of those sort of industries. So I think being strategic and targeting, measuring what you're doing is important. And I think the other thing that I would say, and I saw you sent out a note the other day, Jeb, on creative selling, and it's funny because I sent that on to one of our leaders, Pat Urian, because many conversations with him over the years, and he was the one that said to me, the best quality a sales guy can have is creativity, is being able to think out the box a little bit and come up with creative ways to make things happen. In our world, that can be all sorts of things, but for example, with the interest rates being like they are, we can be creative with the financing. We have our own in-house financing. How can we sort of get people to think about investing in capital equipment by being creative with low payments or no payments or extended terms or whatever it happens to be sort of entice them when they're a little bit unsure because of interest rates. In our world as well, it's a great opportunity for some where the work isn't quite as demanding as it has been, that they can take a step back and maybe look at uh, updating old equipment or old processes. And to that end, we can talk about, okay, why don't we use this as an opportunity to take a step back, look at the big picture. Here you are, this is where you are today. Where do you want to be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years time? Apply things. For us, automation is a growth element, and certainly most companies struggle to get good people even in a market that's down a little bit. So introducing automation, particularly if there's a little breathing space, using that to be creative, to come up with a strategy and a plan, help the customer effectively build their own business plan. So I think those are the things that that we put a focus on. And I think particularly if there is a downturn and a lot of doom and gloom, it's important, more important than ever, to put focus on motivation of your sales teams, is to make sure your sales guys are motivated. And I think for us, one way of doing that is by um, continuous communication, sales meetings, one-on-one meetings. We have a monthly all sales meeting where we share success stories of, this is where a certain sales guy has been successful with a nice order, and this is how he created it, and this is how it went. And I think keeping the motivation at a high level, really kind of, particularly in a down sort of time, is even more important than normal.
I've noticed with some of the sales teams that we're working with, I was just with a team earlier this week where I'm going to use the word disillusion, but I don't really like that word. I would say there's salespeople who are struggling to make the transition, and even leaders that are having a struggle making the transition from the red hot market that we were in over the last, say, 24 months into a market that, in some places, like, for example, new home sales, which is one of the sectors we work in, they're literally in a recession right now. They're in a tough place. But manufacturing, which, like is cyclical, and the way that it works has been on top. Now some sectors are changing, some sectors are hot, like defense. So there's other industries like yours where it's a mixed bag, and there are other industries that are cranking. I mean, they're doing really, really, really well, and they're in a really good marketplace. But I think overall, what I've noticed is that we've come back to a much more traditional
Mm.
place to be, like you said, where the basics and fundamentals of selling matter. And like you, I used to have a book called No Bull Selling. Same thing. I read that book about, it was Hank Trisler wrote that book. I bet I read it 20 times. And every time things would go bad, I would pull that book out and I would read it again. And I still have that book. Um,
Yeah.
but but these salespeople that are struggling with the transition from literally showing up every day, fogging a mirror, and being successful, to now I've got to not only get back to the basics and fundamentals, but I got to grind it out. I got to think, like you said, I got to be more creative. I've got to work a little bit harder. I got to go prospect. I got to show up to meetings. I have to follow up because they're not going to chase me down anymore, because they're not as urgent as they used to be. Those are the individuals that right now are sort of on the edge of either falling out of their jobs and getting sent someplace else, or they're going to pick themselves up and they're going to move into this new place that we find ourselves in, which is essentially the old place that we were in back in 2018,
Right.
19. What should leaders be doing when they see these individuals who are having, you could call it a mental struggle, but for me, it's more of a heart struggle. Like, it's that human struggle of things are different now and I have to change. And how we just don't like, as human beings, don't like to shift into change that easily.
Yeah, that's a good question, and something that uh, over the years I've thought about. And I remember coming across a Pete Carroll interview when he was, I think he was with USC, and he, before he went on to, well, Seattle and other places, I believe. And that football is not my football. My football's with the round ball. But he was an inspiring, it was an inspiring interview. And he was asked, what is it that makes the difference between, those guys that do make it and those guys that don't? And he met at the time some analytical professor, doctor, who basically told him that the difference is a thing called grit. And he went in, and you probably may have heard it, but if you haven't, Google him and watch his interview on grit from USC, because it is, I think, really apt for sales. The difference between those that do make it and those that don't is that you got to have that, and it's not an intellect thing. It's not a personality thing. It's when things get tough, you dig deep and you figure a way to make it happen. And I think that is the difference. Having been through a number of really bad recessions, the crash in 2009, and there was a big recession in the early 2000s. The ones that survived, you had to have that grit. You had to dig deep, and it is those things that you preach, Jeb. The fanatical prospecting, the getting yourself organized, looking yourself in the mirror, getting up, getting ready, looking in the mirror, having your call list prepared. This is who I'm going to call. And acting today, you can find a lot of information before you call anybody on, to make sure you're calling the right people in the right industries with the right potential solutions. And I think that the one difference between those that do make it and those that don't, it is grit. And I think the reason that you and I are connected is when I first read your Sales EQ book, that kind of resonated with me, because I had found a lot of sales guys that have been successful, and then I know a lot that haven't been successful, that maybe give up, particularly when the going gets tough. And I think the one thing that you talked about in there was this Sales EQ, that ability not just to have the grit, but also to have that ability to connect with people in a way that they feel comfortable with you, in order that they then find it easy to tell you about whatever their challenges and problems are. And if you've got that gene in you, that you can then connect the dots between where his pain is and how you can help solve that pain, you do it, you build trust, and the cycle repeats. So I think that's a couple of things, really. I think grit and just that personality, that sales EQ.
And I think this human connection today matters more than ever. And one of the things that strikes me, going back to the red hot market and COVID, so we've spent 3 years kind of locked up in a way, and you and I were in the pre-show, we're talking about how much fun it is just to be back out, just meeting people in person. But we've in some ways allowed that to put barriers between us and other human beings. And then we've got, the further issue of, we created some bad habits when everything was red hot. And in a lot of industries, you just had more customers than you had the ability to service them. I know even in my company last March, and I think about how it was last March, I remember being absolutely exhausted. There was nothing left in the tank. And there was one more company showing up and going, "Hey, can you help us with this? Can you help us with this?" And I just remember being, to the point where I had to fight myself from being ungrateful for not having that many people that were showing up. And then you flip back a year later, and I go back to some of those situations, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I wish I'd taken advantage of that, or I wish I had that in. But we just got, in a lot of places, so many people coming to us that we forgot to be human. We forgot to do that discovery. We forgot to look deep and find out ways that we could close those gaps for them, or help them solve pain. How do you advise your team to get back to that human to human relationship? So I love the fact that you've pivoted into industries where there's opportunity, but getting back to that habit of being human, using your emotional intelligence and really connecting with other people.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, and I think we've spoken about this before, is that the pandemic it accelerated the change in sales because back in the day, sales, if you wanted information on machines, you called the sales guy, he'd come in and bring you the brochure and run through the products, features, and benefits, and the rest of it. But nowadays, anybody that wants anything, whether you want to book a restaurant or anything, you pick your phone up and you Google or you search for information. And so there's what we call there's a transition between, if you like, traditional sales and marketing to more of a digital sales and marketing. And I think that that you've got to have a good machine for digital marketing to be able to get into the fight, because there's no doubt in my mind that sales guys, generally speaking, the sales process is much further down the line when a customer would call you than it used to be. It's a different world. So there's something from a company perspective. We need to be generating leads. We need to use the technology for marketing. I also know that we have some really, really good sales guys, and whilst they should and do prospect and be creative, in addition to that, I think we try to provide them with quality leads, and our goal is to increase our leads. I think when we first started on sort of a digital marketing campaign, if you like, we wanted to see, I guess, some of the best industries have about 30% of their revenue coming from marketing generated leads, and we got some ways to go to that. But I think what we're also seeing with our sales guys is they can do their own campaigns within our sales force. They can target within certain geographic areas or certain industry sectors and go after. And there's no question in my mind that once you've got the inquiry, the difference is you've got to build that rapport. You can't, as much as we've done a lot of stuff virtually. I think you and I were talking about it earlier. Nothing replaces that one-to-one interaction. And sales is often about trust, and you build a lot better trust, I think, when you're in a one-on-one or face-to-face situation. And also, I think from a sales perspective, as a salesperson going into a company on a business-to-business call, you learn an awful lot by just looking around and seeing, particularly in our world, where you tour a manufacturing plant, and you very quickly learn where potential opportunities to upgrade, which the customer may not have even thought about themselves, because they don't know what they don't know. And so I think it's a balance today between the digital kind of world that generates and gets you your videos in the right place so that the customers reach out to you, but it's also, I think, very targeted and going after the potential customers that you have good ideas and good solutions for, that are in an ups or in a market that probably needs some help.
And if you think about the digital piece of this, something that has emerged, my friend Chris Beall was the first person I heard say this, so I want to give him credit for it. But we've hit this. It's almost like it's like when the iPhone came out. It would be that moment of truth with this generative chat, these AI bots that are able to communicate almost at the same level that human beings can communicate in terms of written language. Like they're writing things. I was on ChatGPT this morning working on course descriptions, which makes it really easy. If I got a course, I drop it in, ask it for a description. It gives me a few paragraphs, and then that gets me started, and I'm able to write something that saves me an hour worth of work trying to figure it out on my own. But what Chris said was that suddenly the only communication that's trustworthy is human to human communication, verbal,
Right.
because now anything that is written is suspect, and human beings, we distrust inauthenticity, which a robot is inauthentic, and we distrust anything that we think might have been created by a robot. So anybody that's reading my course descriptions might be going, "Well, a robot wrote that. They didn't write the whole thing. It was a human and robot." But we're using for those things. So does that not elevate the role of the sales professional in guiding the prospect through a complex sale, which is what you do? You sell these complex machines that basically make the entire world run. But does that not change the value and the responsibility of the salesperson to be a good human communicator and build those relationships in the land and world that we live in today, that just changed, where we've got robots everywhere that are doing a lot of the work for us?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's going to become increasingly so. You get on social media and you hear about the AI that's given a slant now. A certain political
Yeah.
slant. You can ask it what you like, and the people that are programming depending on who programs it, is what the sort of feedback that you're going to get. Whereas with that one-on-one human interaction, I don't think we're ever going to I can't imagine a day where we're ever going to get to the point where you look somebody in the eye. That is the true. Can you trust
Yeah.
somebody? Can you, and certainly some of our markets, maybe more than others, places like Texas, they still want to shake hands and do a deal like that, and they'll look you in the eye, and they'll look at guys in the eye, and okay, we got a deal. And I grew up in my sales career doing that, and if I did that, if I shook hands and looked somebody in the eye, I would make sure we never let them down, that we would deliver whatever it was we said we were going to deliver. And hey, it doesn't mean you don't get problems, but then I think the other element of that is, if you've got that human connection and a customer has a problem, you go over and above and beyond to figure out how to solve that problem, and that only then generates more business for the future. Because if you look after somebody, as we all know, if you get looked after by any experience that maybe starts off bad, you end up in a stronger position if you resolve the issue than if you never had the issue. And that's something I don't think robots are ever going to be able to do. That's not that's a human connection that is, and selling and buying is an emotional experience, and so that's always going to be key.
I've got one last question, or one last segment before we wrap up, and I want to focus on decision deferment objections. So think about where we are right now. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a couple of banks that went belly up, and that became all the buzz. If you opened up Wall Street Journal, they were talking about what's the next bank to go. And, of course, in my business, the very first thing we did is we sat down with our banker and we said, okay, where are our accounts and what's insured, what's not insured? And probably smart businesses across the board did the same thing. And we moved some money in some different places to make sure that we weren't exposed. And that creates disruption for buyers who are worried about bad things happening. And so when they're forced with a decision, they'll have a tendency to put things off. And I think to some extent, salespeople get corrupted by that as well, because they start telling stories to themselves about why people won't buy for them, and they accept those excuses. And you said, you were talking earlier about creative selling, and I think this is where this kind of connects. And you were talking about how you can get creative with financing and other things that you can do as an organization. Let's just talk salesperson to salesperson about this concept of buying deferment, another decision deferment. I'm going to wait because I'm not sure what's going to happen. Or, something just happened right now. I'm going to hold off for a little bit. How should salespeople be preparing for those objections? Because they're going to come. I mean, there's no doubt that you're going to face a buyer who starts to pull back on you. How should you prepare for it? And when you get them, how should you deal with it or handle it, both at the emotional level and at the rational level?
Yeah, that's always a tough one, and it really depends on the customer and the reason that they're trying to defer. Certainly in our world, particularly at the moment, the bank situation, they don't want to use the cash. They're kind of, so we we try. I always try to drill down to the fundamental reason. Why not? Why will you not? And you've got to kind of ask a lot of why. um, how could we overcome that objection? For us, it is coming back to the creativity of it. um, I in certain circumstances will try and create a sense of urgency. um, and we do use pricing, that there's certain, particularly with us, there's certain deals that can be done this month that won't be able to be done next month. Availability of product, there's a limited amount of product, particularly in our world. There's been a chip shortage, and so so those that move now are able to get the technology in. The other thing that we will do is maybe wrap around it some soft, if you like, soft benefits for the customer. For example, we can do engineering, we can program the machines, we can do extra training, we could turnkey his part, so it's ready to go. Just needs to press the button, and he's going to be making parts. So we try to be creative and get them off the dime. What we do find as well is that, depending on the type of customer, not necessarily the sector, but the bigger companies that are probably putting together capital spends for multiple years, in a down market, tend to be better targets for us than the smaller job shop that's relying on his work from another one. So if you've got a bigger company with capital budgets planned, we find that that's probably better to target than smaller companies that will probably, it's kind of feast and famine for them. They get 2 orders and they're overrun, whereas the bigger manufacturers are able to handle that better. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of the way we would go about it.
How about, say, during discovery, if you're doing a walkthrough in a plant and they're looking at replacing a machine, understanding the cost of keeping that machine on the production floor versus moving a new machine in terms of labor cost and repair cost and upkeep, and even energy, for example, if it's pulling a lot of energy, what that long-term cost would be, or or understanding the opportunity cost. If they don't slot this machine in, what are they going to miss, and how long that's going to be? So when you're dealing with that fear, that's all that deferment is. I'm afraid if I do something now, it's going to create a negative future consequence. But using the metrics that matter, using math to be able to minimize their fear by showing them that if they move forward, how much more it's going to save them, or how much more money it will make them if they're in that situation. I mean, is that something that would figure into it, and how does that impact discovery at the front end?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When you're selling technology, that's kind of a fundamental, to be honest, that you build together, you build the ROI, the return on investment for this is your current process, this is your current cost against the newer technology. And for us, a lot of what we would do would take multiple machines or multiple people out of a process, because we're selling the latest and greatest technology. So to your point, it's not the cost of making the decision, it's the cost of not making the decision that's going to really impact your business. The other element of that as well is that it's for us, if a customer buys the latest and greatest technology, that's also a sales tool for them. This will open up, because you're going to be much more efficient, that more effective. You're going to be able to go to other customers. You're going to be able to go and get other work and newer contracts, or bigger contracts, because the supply chain want to put work with people that can do it efficiently, the right quality, with the right deliveries and everything else. So And you're absolutely right that part of that ROI is the maintenance fees. How much are you spending at the moment on spare parts? How much downtime are you getting? How much uptime? How much labor is in this? How could we automate what you're doing? So yeah, the when you're selling tech, capital equipment and technology, particularly in our world, the financial justification is absolutely key to moving it forward.
And that's exactly why, my advice to salespeople is that you should invest about 80% of the time in the sales process in discovery. What are you learning?
Yeah,
What are you asking? And that intersects with the one of the very first things that you talked about was getting back to the basics and fundamentals. And I think that this is the place where I have the most heartache for salespeople because I love salespeople, is that we came out of this period of time where salespeople were skipping that step because buyers were going to buy anyway. Like they
right.
were calling you and saying, "I want it." And so the salespeople were transacting. They were going, "Hello, okay, here's what it's going to cost. Here's when you're going to get it." And we got out of the habit of doing that deep level discovery, and that's
Yeah.
shocking some salespeople now when buyers are holding back and they're thinking about it. They don't have any ammunition to reduce fear because they didn't ask the questions. They didn't do the work up front.
Oh, totally. Absolutely agree. And I think I said, we got a little complacent because times were good. And it was a bit like shooting fish in a barrel, and it's changed. Even the up industries, it's changed. The competitive lands, it's much more competitive, than it was. And so with that, you have to do your homework. You have to have a very solid business case as to why this is a good thing for the customer, and that does include a lot of the research, and a lot of that research you can do. um, it repeats because it's a similar process for multiple different
Yeah.
customers. They're doing the same kind of thing, and once you get that pitch down and you really understand the challenges of that industry, and in our world it is labor is the big issue. Getting good labor and the cost of labor, that's the issue, and the technology we sell really addresses that. And every time we sell something, the return on investment is key to success, and doing the homework is a fundamental. Got to do it.
Very good. I love your company. I think it's an amazing company, and with a just an incredible history. But I know that you're always looking for ultra high performing salespeople. You're looking for the top of the top, the best of the best. Just like you, when you fell in love when you were in your 20s with machine tools, you're looking for people who carry that same passion. So I want to give you just a second. If there is someone out there who has as a career in sales and they're looking to move to the next level or looking to do something that's really fascinating and interesting and on the cutting edge, especially around robotics and the software and technology of creating efficiencies in manufacturing. What would you say to them about joining Ellison Technology, or at least checking out your company? And how would they go about looking at careers at Ellison?
Well, you can certainly contact us through our website, ellisontechnologies.com. What would I say? If this is a great industry for, if you're the right kind of person, you've got the right energy and you've got the right passion, you can make a lot of money. It pays well. And the interesting thing is that back when I was first started, it was always thought you had to be an engineer to do it, which isn't the case. We some of our very top sales guys, I'm thinking of one of the young guys that we've got, came from National Car Rental. We did a kind of a trainee manager type gig with them, came to us, and we've got a few like that have come. We've got engineers as well that have been in the machine manufacturing world. And we have, as you know, we do the sales training with you. We have you regularly doing our sales training. And we have a very strong onboarding process within salesforce.com to teach the fundamentals. And I'm a firm believer, I mentioned the training I had from TAC in the early days. I'm a firm believer that you get out what you put in. And that includes us as a company, that if we want to get the best people and get the best out of them, then we need to invest in them. We need to give them the tools that they need to do the job. And if I've had it said to many times, that it's said to me with new people that we've taken on, they really are appreciative of the way that we set things up to get them up and running. So, and we are, although we're relatively big now, we still have a family business type of feel to it. We have 16 offices throughout the US. I think we're over 400 people now, and we still kind of operate in a way with a culture that is very much a family business. So, hey, if there are any young, well, not young, any good salespeople that want to talk to us, don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to talk to you.
I love it. And if you want to do like really cool things and you want an interesting job where you're not always doing exactly the same thing, you're working with different industries. As Graham was saying, like you could be in defense one day, you could be in space the next day, but you're literally selling the machines that make the entire world run. It's an amazing career. You should absolutely go check out Ellison Technologies. I will personally vouch for it. Is a fantastic sales job. And it's really all about being creative, being smart, being able to connect with other human beings, being able to run the sales process and connect with the basics and fundamentals, and being a fanatical prospector so you can go out there and build pipe. Graham Hooper, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Sales Gravy Podcast. And folks, make sure you go check out Sales Gravy University. We have thousands of people from all over the globe who come to Sales Gravy to learn how to sell. They learn the basics and fundamentals. And if you've never taken a course on Sales Gravy, just go to learn.salesgravy.com, learn.salesgravy.com, use the code free course, and you can pick any course from the catalog, any one you want, and you can join it and you can check it out yourself. And I'll see you next time on the Sales Gravy Podcast.